Now, Professor Josy Joseph will once again take the virtual stage for a captivating keynote address, shedding light on the key trends, impacts, and future scope of artificial intelligence. I welcome Professor Josy Joseph.
Thank you. Before I begin my lecture, I wish to place on record my sincere thanks to the organizers and particularly my friend Sam Johnson for extending this invitation to me and making me a part of this two-day international virtual conference on artificial intelligence. Let me declare at the outset that I have no expertise on artificial intelligence. I'm like most of us, I'm also beginning to learn and make sense of this huge technological leap that's going to hit all of us. But somehow Sam thinks that I'm capable of speaking on anything under the sun or above it. So I think that is perhaps an exaggerated perception of your undergraduate teacher. Anyway, I'll try my best. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm happy to see this collaboration between Sam and Shema extending to academic affairs as well. So all the best to this seminar. Okay. Now, my topic is art and literature in the age of AI, but I think I should begin by saying something about artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is not something new. It has been around for a long time, at least for a few decades. But what is new is the evolution it has taken in the last 3 or 4 years. The last 2 years, I would say, to be precise. And what it bodes for the future. So this is AI 2 or AI of the future that is, that is exciting us and also worrying us. You say this about science. Earlier, the principal referred to the two sides of a coin, and how I remember an essay that was prescribed in the Malayalam reader way back in high school, which talked about science using the metaphor of the humble knife as a metaphor of science, how this knife can be used to take someone's life, but at the hands of an expert surgeon, this very knife can be used to save someone's life. So science is that kind of an instrument. If it gets to the wrong hands, it can really cause damage. And that's exactly the worrying part of artificial intelligence. And in fact, if you look at the scientific community all over the world, they are in this dilemma. They know that they're going to unleash this monster, and they're now thinking of regulating it, but it's doubtful whether the next generation of AI, which is generative AI, that is artificial intelligence that can create more intelligent systems or create even more powerful machines or robots. Those who have seen Rajinikanth's movie Endiran will remember that apocalyptical climax where one Endiran produces numerous Endirans. So, and each machine will be faster and more powerful than the previous one. So that is generative AI, and the moral dilemma faced by the scientific community as well as political authorities is that if we don't do it, the bad actors will come and do it, and then we'll be pushed out of the equation, and then we will be helpless. We'll be helplessly watching the Chinese or the Russians or the North Koreans going ahead with the AI project and then taking control of the world. Now, such a dilemma was there during the Second World War also. Those who have seen Christopher Nolan's movie Oppenheimer will recall this, that the reason why America went ahead with the Manhattan Project is not because they didn't find any other way to win the Second World War. Japan was already withdrawing, uh, and the Allied forces have almost won the war, but because they wanted to experiment this in real time on a real location, because they feared that the Germans or some other nation will go ahead and take the dominance in this particular field of nuclear power. So that is a moral dilemma that people are facing now. Now, mm, now that I mentioned Christopher Nolan's movie, I want to also touch upon that biography, that brilliant biography uh, on Oppenheimer, written by two authors, Kay Bird and Martin Sherwin. And that biography is titled American Prometheus, The Triumph and Tragedy of Robert Oppenheimer. And the movie is actually based on this biography, okay? And Oppenheimer is called the American Prometheus. Now that is interesting. Prometheus is he who stole the fire from the gods and shared it with the human race, and for which he was publicly tried and eternally punished. He was nailed on the hills, and a vulture would descend on him every day and peck at his liver, eat his liver, and would almost finish it by evening. But the liver will uh, regenerate at night and resume its former shape uh, by daybreak, only for the vulture to to return and continue pecking at it. So it went on. It was a kind of a relentless torture for Prometheus, right? And interestingly, one of the earliest, if not the first, science utopia, or I'm sorry, dystopian fiction, which was published in 1818 by Mary Shelley. I'm referring to Frankenstein. Uh, and that novel has a subtitle. Many people actually uh, uh, do not remember the subtitle. And the subtitle is Modern Prometheus. So Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus. That is the full title of the novel. Now, Frankenstein, again, most people mistake Frankenstein for the name of the monster, but it's actually the name of the scientist, Victor Frankenstein, who invented this monster in his lab. Uh, and this, Mary Shelley is imagining this in 1818, okay, 200 years ago, more than 200 years ago, that it is possible to create life from, uh, in the lab, right, to a scientific or some technical process. And and this monster was huge. He was 8 feet tall, and he also had human emotions, perhaps two deadly mistakes that Victor Frankenstein committed. Because he was so tall, he could not get along with the rest of humanity, and he was seen as the dangerous other, and he was pushed out of everywhere, every place. And because he had human emotions, he got vengeful as well. And so he turned against his own creator, and he decided to wreak havoc on all humanity. And so it's a terrible, terrible story. Now, the AI can be this Frankenstein monster uh, if it is not used properly. But whether can we say no to AI because of its impending dangers? Think of the generative AI capability getting into the hands of these rogue states, some of them I mentioned earlier, uh, and think of the digital warfare of the future, and think of the way that AI can be used to crash all our systems, to take over our, say, the banking system, or all digital transactions, to know all about us and to use that information uh, for criminal purposes. AI, the possibility is unimaginable actually today. We will only know when it hits us, say 10 or 20 years from now. But does that mean that we should say no to AI altogether? No way. Because as Victor Hugo famously said, nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. So whether we like it or not, AI is here to stay, and it's only the beginning. Now, I'll just touch upon the benefits of AI. AI uh, will make possible some of the tasks at which we now think is impossible, are impossible. In biology, for example, AI can analyze the protein sequence. It can look at the structure of all proteins. And what does that imply? That means all forms of cancer can be pre-detectable. We can, one blood test will tell us whether we are likely to get any kind of cancer, say 20 years from now, 30 years from now, whatever. And it can also uh, create precise medicines or personalized medicines for all our or cures or remedies for all our illness. Just one possibility. Uh, or in physics, this great scientific dream of nuclear fusion is now becoming a reality thanks to AI. So once AI builds those systems and those machinery or the equipment which makes nuclear fusion possible, and the implication is that we will be able to produce all the energy that the whole universe requires, the entire amount of energy that the whole world requires, free of cost, right? And we can distribute it freely. So just two possibilities of the benefits of AI. And think of all this, the industrial automation. Think of the possibilities of robotics. It's already there, but now we have robotic surgery, for example, all these precise tasks that the human fingers would shiver doing it, and AI or aided robots will uh, will carry them out precisely and perfectly, right? So uh, and AI and this is only the beginning of AI. So think of the possibilities in 10 or 20 years from now. Most of the students here are probably familiar with ChatGPT, and I suppose some of them have already used it to submit their uh, class assignments or whatever. Uh, I think only teachers are not aware of this, or maybe teachers are the ones who do not try or check out this ChatGPT. Now, the ChatGPT is a, a software or an app introduced by OpenAI, and whose chief executive officer is a relatively young guy. His name is also Sam, but not Sam Johnson, but Sam Altman. He's under 40, I think, and he was here in India a couple of weeks ago, and he was going around and talking to the media people and all. And I was listening to him in a couple of interviews that he gave, and also live press conferences. Um, of course, he is very optimistic about AI. Being young and idealist, he only thinks about the good outcomes of AI. Now, this is basically it's called LLM, large language model. So it's basically you're feeding as much data as possible into a system, and so much so that the system has enough knowledge to answer all your queries and do all the mundane tasks for you, write all your assignments, prepare all your project documents, uh, write all your applications, all of those things. And this is just the beginning. For ChatGPT to be effective, the data should be very large. So the more data that you feed in, the more precise it gets. Right now, I think the data that the ChatGPT holds is a bit outdated. Uh, there is no live updation of the information, And so if you ask about some of these contemporary events, ChatGPT is helpless. If you ask about what happened yesterday or what happened last year or maybe last month, ChatGPT will not be able to help. But the more data it stores, it becomes more powerful. Uh, the latest issue of Time magazine has a story from India on the lead. I mean, on the cover you see a bunch of uh, Indians from the rural Assam. I mean, sorry, Andhra Pradesh, and this is about uh, it's a story on AI by the people for the people. That is the title of the story. It's about AI giving jobs, directly giving jobs to the poorest of the poor in Andhra Pradesh. And what are they doing? All they have to do is um, to provide data sets. That's a term that they use. Data sets, that is voice text or uh, image text in Kannada or from around their locality. Okay, uh, voice text or language text or voice text. Yeah, it's mostly language, Kannada language. So all they have to do is to record the conversations or speak to their mobile phones in Kannada, because right now ChatGPT or any form of AI machine does not have enough data in Kannada. Now, the same thing will happen in all the Indian languages, in all the languages of the world. That is how the AI will generate its database. And these poor people, because they get paid in dollars, and for them it's a fortune for a simple task that they're doing, going around and recording conversations. Mm, okay, now uh, this artificial intelligence, I said earlier in my inaugural address that this is like that moment in history when, say, electricity was invented or the internet was invented and made available to the people. That is very important. It's not enough that you have a very wonderful piece of invention or technology, but that which is not. But if it is not available to the masses, that's a different thing altogether. But once you have a technology that everybody has access to, and that's why I bring up this example of electricity or the internet. Now everybody has access to the internet now. That was not the case 20 or 30 years ago, right? I still remember the first time I got access to the internet. This was in the late 90s. Uh, I was very young at the time, and because uh, and I was a young teacher at SB, and so excited about this new technology, I went and got the first my email ID, which is Josy Joseph at hotmail.com, because at that time there was no Google, uh, none of these other companies. There was only Hotmail, and Hotmail was still with Sabir Bhatia, an Indian who invented it. This was the first uh, email service which was available for free. And I still retain that account because it was so early. I got it in my full name. But I remember the excitement with which we embraced that new technology. Now, uh, excuse me, Madam Clinsa Kurian, could you please mute your microphone? Thank you. Yes, thank you. But there is always this anxiety about new technology. One of the poems that I teach for the MA students is Stephen Spencer's Pylons, in which Spender talks about the time when the electricity was coming, comes to the rural emerald landscape of the English countryside, and the the ambiguities thereon of the poet. He who loves his uh, countryside, but he, being a progressive poet, he also welcomes this modern technology. So, but at the same time, he is aware of the dangers, right? Like whips of anger, lightning's danger, that is There runs a quick perspective of the future. That is how he puts it. Then you have several movies uh, in English, of course. There is this, the Terminator, Matrix, Blade Runner, all of those movies. Endiran I mentioned, but I also remember G. Aravindan's movie Uridatha. I don't know how many of you have seen that movie. It's a brilliant movie. It tells a story of electricity coming again to a rural village in Kerala, and the way the people, completely unused to this new idea, respond to this new thing, right? So we are at, that moment when something, the enormity of which we are not even aware of. AI has unimaginable implications, right? So we need to have more sessions of this kind to reflect on the various, aspects and applications of AI. Now, I talked about the benefits of AI. Now I'll touch upon the dangers of AI. The greatest danger, as I already mentioned, is when the AI becomes generative, when AI gets a mind of its own. Right now, AI has no consciousness. Right now, AI is not sentient. It does not have human sensations, no feelings, no emotions. But the next generation AI is capable of processing human emotions and also internalizing human emotions and also responding to human emotions. So it might work like a human being. So it would be like a robo with a mind, right? With self consciousness, who can take independent decisions. And not only that, who can even create more powerful and more dangerous machines. That is this that it is that moment when AI becomes generative or self-replicating that it can really be dangerous. And also, if AI gets into the wrong hands, I also touched upon it earlier, then the immediate implication I would uh, highlight is the spread of false information, which is so very easy. Now it's already there. You know how the social media uses algorithm for propaganda, right? But now this is nothing what compared to what generative AI is capable of doing, or what social scientists describe as deep fake is capable of doing. That means AI can appear in somebody else's shape and voice, and manipulate things that we will not know who we are talking to. It could be a familiar face and a familiar voice, but you could be talking to a machine and you're sharing your secrets to that machine, right? uh, right now you have this social media feeds where AI curates data and thereby uh, make personalized feeds. You might have noticed this on the social media, or at least in the shopping apps, the Amazon or the Flipkarts. When you buy something, they remember it, and then they have the system in place to prompt you to buying more of such stuff, right? Now, already there is this AI algorithm curating our feeds and thereby influencing our thoughts and decisions. But the next generation AI will actually create that content. Right now, the content is created by humans, right, with vested interest or ideology. That is how this political propaganda. And the next generation, the AI will create this content, including videos or interviews, whatever, and then it will pound our platforms, social media platforms, and we will not be able to distinguish between truth and reality. Now, the AI's capacity for uh, distorting the democratic process is already well known and documented. The last presidential elections, right? The kind of role that the social media did, and also even in India. And interestingly, two of the world's greatest democracies, India and the US, are going to the polls in 2024 and just wait for the amount of AI generated content that is going to pound our social media platforms. America is supposed to have the finest public information system in the world. Okay, America as a nation is far ahead in technology than anybody else, but an average American still doesn't know who actually won the last presidential elections. An average American doesn't know whether uh, the vaccine is effective or not. An average American doesn't know, or the majority, I'll put it this way, the majority of Americans do not know if climate change is real or not. Such is the amount of propaganda that is going around, and such is the vulnerability of the average American to yield to this kind of propaganda. And AI has only started the game. Okay. Now, I said earlier that the 85% of all new jobs uh, do not exist at the moment, will have to be invented, right? What about the existing jobs? Some of our familiar professions will die a natural death. The work, and if you take a look at the list of professions that are being threatened by AI, you have some very respectable professions there. Accountants, for example, the chartered accountants. I think most of the chartered accountants will go out of job. The world does not need these many chartered accountants. The world does not need these many accountants, because once this digital transaction becomes commonplace and everybody does all transactions digitally, and when you have this AI system, all accounting will take place automatically. So when you buy something and pay for it using your app, Google Pay or Paytm, whatever, that information will reach all the relevant systems, including the income tax, including the GST, including this here and there, everywhere. So much so that you don't have to, do this calculation at all. So maybe you need just 1/10 or 1/100th of the accountants that we have right now in 5 years or 10 years from now. Lawyers, another profession that is being seriously threatened. For every lawyer that argues a case in the court, there is maybe some 20 or 30 lawyers who do who do the homework, okay, the research, the legal research. If you go to any big legal firms in any big city in the country, you will have a few lawyers who appear in the court, but you will have hundreds of lawyers in their offices doing all this backroom research. Now AI will do all that. If we have a case, all you have to do is to put it to the AI, and the AI will tell you about all the such cases ever presented in all the courts in the country, right, at all the levels. And then AI will tell you about the arguments made in favor and against the proposition or whatever, or the case. And AI will also tell you what all were the evidences presented in the various courts, and which are the evidences accepted by the courts, and each court, the magistrate court, or the district court, or the high court, the session court, all of that, and what kind of evidence was rejected by the court, all of that, right? So we wouldn't need these many lawyers. What about our profession, teaching? I think the tutor bot will take over basic teaching. We don't need these many teachers. I think this basic education, school education, um, even elementary education, even the basic level college education will also be taken by the technology. And the advantage of an AI tutor is that an AI tutor will know infinitely more than the best scholar teacher that there is on earth. Okay, AI will know more, and not only that, the AI will also be infinitely more patient, and it can repeat a lesson any number of times, and if you want, it can scale down the tone of that lecture, maybe make it more humorous, make it more simple. uh, some of these the coaching academies are already using this. For example, this Khan Academy, they're already using this AI for the higher level mathematics coaching. So suppose there is this problem and the student makes a mistake. Okay, the teacher, the human teacher, usually corrects that mistake and says this is wrong and this, and gives the right answer. But the AI will not only correct that mistake, but the AI will also tell the student why she made that mistake in the first place, he or she made that mistake in the first place, and what was a thinking process, the mathematical process that ran through his mind while solving that problem. And if there are five mistakes, AI will analyze all five mistakes and will present all these uh, that mathematical thinking processes that resulted in that mistake. And then the AI will teach you how to think the right way. Okay, so it's infinitely patient, it is infinitely resourceful, it's infinitely more knowledgeable. And much of this teaching, we are already talking about this blended mode of teaching. Now UGC says students can earn their credits by listening to recorded videos or online digital using digital platforms, or uh, using digital content, whatever. So this only increase as AI gets smarter. So we may not need these many teachers, designers, or AI will do all the designing that the world needs. So we don't have to, uh, depend on an individual for every 10 designs that a human designer makes. AI will give you a million options, right? Even drivers, 10 or 20 years from now, perhaps we'll have driverless cars, vehicles, and all the public utility vehicles, or big buses and trams and trains and aeroplanes and ships will all be uh, controlled by machines. And it will be there wouldn't be this human error. It will be absolutely uh, foolproof, or precise operation. See, look at the way we have sent a vehicle to outer space, to the Chandrayaan project, right? uh, it's controlled by machines, and it goes and moves around the space, and then is going to land on the surface of the moon. Well, if the machine can do that, it might as well easily negotiate the traffic on our streets, and then there wouldn't be any accidents at all, because it's always a human error of judgment that causes an accident. Machines do not make that mistake, so we will not have traffic accidents on the road. So these are uh, the possibilities, and of course, you can imagine how what are uh, the some of our professions would be 10 or 20 years from now. Now I come to the implication of on art and literature, or even writing. This writing skills will become irrelevant, right? Because AI will be doing much of the writing that we do today. So even as such, our students do not believe in grammar. They don't believe in subject-verb agreement, or the the right use of tenses or prepositions or the articles. Well, they don't have to. The students of the next generation don't have to, because basic writing AI will do. And then, if at all they have to write something, they can write and then ask the AI to look over it. AI will do to writing skills what the calculator did to our mathematical ability. In my childhood, I knew the telephone numbers of all my contacts, right? Uh, an earlier generation knew even the multiplication table of fractions. If you talk to the old carpenters in Kerala, they will tell you the multiplication table of fractions. because that was a kind of training they had. Then that was a kind of skill that required for the profession, right? And with the introduction of the calculator, well, we don't have to do all this difficult calculations. The machine does it for you. Now think of the possibilities of AI. AI will generate all the sentences that we know. That also means that we may not need these many English teachers, language teachers, right? Uh, and can AI completely replace the the teaching profession? I doubt, because there will always be this human urge for human contact, and this hand holding of an experienced person. I think that is still will be valuable, especially when you have machines all around you. Perhaps the good teacher, the imaginative teacher, uh, will be all the more valued, but there will be very few in number. I'm reminded of that immortal statement of Bertrand Russell, that knowledge can be gathered from books or from various other sources, but the love of knowledge can be uh, transmitted only by a good teacher. Only an imaginative teacher can transmit the love of knowledge. So I suppose there will still be human teachers, and their experience being valued, but not as many. Okay. Now, earlier I talked about Sam Altman, this young CEO of OpenAI, the, the inventors of ChatGPT. But I also want to talk about Jeffrey Winton. I don't know how many of you have heard about him. He's a British psychologist and a computer scientist. He's considered the godfather of AI. Why was he in the news recently? He was in the news because he resigned as the team head of Google. And Google, like all the other companies, have pumped in millions and billions of dollars uh, to develop their own systems of AI. And this guy, a very senior professional, must be in his late 70s, I guess, is a godfather of AI. He resigned, and he said he doesn't want to be part of this game anymore, because he fears that, and he has cited ethical reasons, moral compunctions for his resignation, because he fears that the AI will perhaps be more misused and abused than used properly for the betterment of the human race. Uh, and he even warns the world of an existentialist threat that AI poses, especially this generative AI poses. Again, I'm reminded of Christopher Nolan's movie, in that famous scene where Oppenheimer is taken to the White House, and for that meeting with the president after the Second World War is over, after Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed out of existence, and Oppenheimer is silent and brooding, and then he looks up and tells the president, "I've got blood on my hands." So something like that kind of a moral dilemma, even the godfather of AI is saying. So I don't know what is in store for us. I don't want to sound very cynical and pessimistic on this inaugural lecture, this keynote lecture, but I can't help it. Then uh, there was a very interesting lecture by Harari. You will know Harari, the great mm, philosopher of the future. Okay, who I'm sure many of the students have read his books, Homo Deus, or Sapiens, or his book, the lessons for the 21 lessons for the 21st century. He gave a lecture some 2 or 3 months ago. It's on YouTube. It has been watched by more than 1 million people already, on this very topic. It's titled AI and the Future of Humanity. And Harari doesn't sound very optimistic in that lecture either. And he says AI, if it develops the way it is at the moment, is going to put an end to human history, not an end to history, but an end to history dominated by human beings. And and he talks about ChatGPT, and he says this is actually a hacking of our most important operating software, or cultural software, that is language. All through the history of the human race, we have used language to tell our stories, to share our dreams, or our promises, right? All our religious discourses, all our mythologies, all our cultural texts are all created by or in and through language. And that language has now been taken over, hijacked by a machine, and that machine has complete control, and that machine holds, you know, all of that. And now the next generation AI, once it has internalized all this existing text, and Harari puts it this way, this machine will eat the entire body of cultural text we have produced over thousands of years. The machine will eat it, the machine will digest it, and then start gushing out a flood of new cultural creation, right? And we will be at the mercy, at the mercy, we'll be at the receiving end. So, uh, and Harari also makes this interesting observation that for the first time, we will have a non-human scripture. Right now, believers believe, claim that all the scriptures are God-given and not a product of human imagination. But Harari says, for the first time, we will have a scripture, this whole ecosystem, whether you call it is ChatGPT or some other software that all of us will be using. It will be the first non-human scripture that all of us will be believing in and following by. Now, what our prophets and poets and politicians over the centuries have done using language and through stories or dreams or promises to influence the human mind, AI will do far more easily and far more quickly. Now I'll come to the last part of my lecture, which is on art and literature. What is the threat that AI poses to literature? Right now, there is already ChatGPT poetry. You just ask ChatGPT to write a poem on any topic, maybe any of your celebrity. Ask ChatGPT to write a poem on your favorite movie star, say Rajinikanth or Kamal Hassan or whoever, right? Or Ranbir Kapoor. ChatGPT will do it immediately, and then you can ask ChatGPT or this AI to write it in the manner of a Shakespearean sonnet, and then you can ask to the machine to change its rhyme scheme. You can ask it to change its the amount of figuration in it, right? Add more metaphors or more alliteration, bring in more alliteration, all of these things. So what will happen eventually is that art will lose its credibility. Literature will lose its credibility because we wouldn't know if this text that we are reading is actually generated by a machine or not. As such, AI is already being used as a tool or an assistant, right? You have grammar check, for example, and you can also use AI uh, to generate text, and then you can touch upon it and you can just improve it or remove it and then claim it to be your own. So text as an assistant for text generating, it's already done. Now this the uh, will be commonplace. My own guess is that all the movies, mainstream movies, and I'm sure all these shallow entertainment programs, so this television serials and all these stuff would be scripted by AI in the future. Because it's very easy. You can just give a formula and then ask AI to work on this permutations and combinations, change the name of the characters and situations. It'll come up with 100,000 or whatever, a number of textual possibilities or thematic possibilities and all of that, right? Now, uh, the first threat, of course, is to the human race itself. And then if something uh, untoward happens and the machine takes over control, and then there is no point in talking about poetry or art or literature, right? As Adorno famously said, that it is barbaric to write poetry after Auschwitz, after the horrors of the Holocaust. It's simply not possible to write about, the flowers or the birds or the human emotions. You can only write about that horror. So to write poetry or sentimental poetry, or romantic poetry, or familiar poetry is impossible, he said. And I also remember Arundhati Roy writing that the first of a long series of polemical essays in 1997 or 98. She had published The God of Small Things a couple of years earlier. And then the then Vajpayee government, tried the first, or rather the second, or the large-scale nuclear test in India, and she writes her first long polemical critical piece, and you all remember the title. It was titled "The End of Imagination." So when you have something of this kind happening to the whole world, its immediate fallout or casualty is your power to imagine or power to dream, and we talk about these things in aesthetic terms. Okay, so that is one thing. And then at a more practical level, this danger of the AI generating all the text, so that we wouldn't know whether it's a machine or a human mind that has created this art in front of it. I'll give you a couple of more examples. Take music, for example. Now, we already have the software that can produce music. It's called Soundraw or something. There is an app, you can download it, and then you can just create your own music. Now, AI is already used in music, in composing music, in generating music. And think about this, the kind of work that a Beethoven or a Mozart took a whole lifetime to create, AI can produce in a few seconds. Even, I'll make the argument that even of a better quality, because the AI there is no limitation. There is always this limit to the human mind, the possibility of the human mind, but the machine knows no limit. As long as you follow this basic rules of music, see, it's 7 notes. Okay. Now, the AI is capable of generating an endless number of permutations and combinations of these notes. So much so that the number of tunes that AI is capable of producing is infinite. So, and it is going to happen. So perhaps the next big name in film music, in South Indian film music, perhaps will be AI. You think of the legendary masters of the past, the M.S. Vishwanathan, the doyen of South Indian music of an earlier generation. And then you had Ilayaraja, who brought in the electronic element, right, in music, with this electric guitar and all of that, the keyboard, electric keyboard and all of that, electronic keyboard and all of that. And then you had A.R. Rahman, who brought in the computer. So he is the one who used digital content in music more than anybody else. And he was the one who also would create new sounds, so much so that actually explains the freshness of an A.R. Rahman tune or song. Because some of the sounds that we hear, I mean the instrument sounds, are of instruments that do not exist. He's actually created that sound in his studio, in his high processor computer. So if he gives a note as a sound of a bell, that is a digital sound which is sweeter or more melodious than all the bells of the world. So he has already created this digital sound. Now, the next step perhaps is AI, which is going to create all the music for us. And think of all these grand spectacles of movies. Right now, we talk about computer graphics, CG, right? Now, CG is nothing compared to the possibilities of AI graphics, right? And so we'll have unimaginable visuals and visual, perhaps even immersive experience. Uh, we already have these high tech movie halls in Europe, in Japan, and other countries. Where you go there, we have this 7D screening. It's an immersive experience, and when it rains on the screen, water drops fall on your body. When the wind is blowing, you get the wind on your face, or when there is a rose or a rose garden, you get actually the smell of rose in the movie hall. All of that, and AI will take this to a different level of. Perhaps we do not have to go to the cinema at all. We can just wear a gadget and be transposed to another world. It's already there. There is this app called Oculus. I don't know if you're familiar with it, which is going to disrupt the tourism industry altogether. Uh, it's an app, it's like this digital, the goggles that you wear, and then you can be transposed to a city anywhere in the world, say New York, live at the moment. Right now, it's at the experimental stage. So now, 5 or 10 years from now, when you integrate all the AI cameras, all the CCTVs, and all of those, the, all the public places, not in the private rooms of anybody's house, but all these public places, you can just walk through the streets of New York, sitting here on your armchair or lying on in your bed. You can just move through the streets of New York, seeing all the sights and objects there. Of course, you cannot interact with the people there. Maybe you cannot, have a cup of coffee or a burger there, but you can just see, and as it's happening live at the moment. So perhaps the tourism, the idea of tourism will change. Perhaps people will spend money and time and the botheration of traveling from one place to another just for the experience of it, and no more for sightseeing. For sightseeing, you can just sit at home and do this, right? So uh, now you can imagine the implications of AI in art and literature. Art, painting. Just think about it. In the 19th century, when photography was invented, they said this is the end of painting. Certainly, it put an end to portrait painting as was practiced. Raja Ravi Verma, would have struggled today because he made all this money uh, by painting the kings and the princes all around the country, right? So, portrait painting was put to an end by photography. Similarly, once AI takes over, and there is already this software, it's called DALI, named after this great surrealist painter Salvador Dali, who had this habit of mixing the various styles of his forerunners or all those great masters of previous generations. So Dali was known for doing this and thus creating surrealistic. What he means is that this is super realism, realism that transcends the limitations of our rational mind, of our rational perspective. So he's trying to create a higher kind of realism. So that explains the logic of surrealism. Now, this AI will do, so we will have images that, like Baudrillard says about the various levels of simulacrum, that a copy of something that does not exist. Okay, so you will have colors, a blue which is bluer than any blue that exists here. You will have perhaps new colors, this combinations, and all these patterns. So art will be something else, and literature also, once the machines. But I don't know, maybe there will still be this urge for this human imagination. But then we do not know whether the human beings 20 years from now will be as human as we are, right? We are post-human or transhuman. Uh, we are not the same species that lived, say, 20 or 30 years ago, right? When I was your age, and I'm talking about the students here, there was no internet. When I did my, when I was in college, I was a student, there was no internet. There was no cable television. There was no smartphone. I lived, it was a completely different world and a different value systems and different terms of human relationships. But now, uh, my child, who is in high school, is already born into this digital ecosystem. So much so that all of us now depend so much on our smartphones, right? Can you think of a day without your smartphone, without all these social media handles, all these apps, without your WhatsApps, without your Instagrams, and without your, your Google Pay or all of this? No, that means we are already uh, post-human or transhuman. There is, dep- it varies from person to person. Maybe this degree of digitization that has happened in our subjectivity, right? So 20 years from now, 30 years from now, for a generation that is born into this ecosystem of AI, the very idea of humanity would be different. So uh, we need not project our existential worries to uh, a generation which is different from us, which is completely different from us. I would call it the next phase of human evolution. So it will be a different species altogether. Okay. Now, when Sam extended this invitation to me, I thought I would come over there and meet all of you in person. Only later did I realize that this is going to be a digital conference. See, Charthala is just hardly an hour's drive from where I am. But then my voice and my face has to go to the outer space in digitalized form and then come back to you sitting in your respective homes. This was unthinkable a few years ago. It was only during the COVID years that we actually uh, began to depend on this technology, and we in fact survived those COVID years using this. But even after the pandemic got over, we're now continuing this practice. I'm not, I mean, blaming or accusing you anything. This is how we all conduct our lives. Okay. So similarly, once the AI is introduced and once the AI becomes commonplace and all of us begin to use AI, then I don't know, we'll have moved to the next level of human evolution. We will perhaps become a completely different species. Whether it's for the better or worse of the human race, we will never know, because that is a silly question. That is a stupid question, because you cannot say that whether human life in 2021 is better than human life in 1991 or 1921 or 1821. That is a uh, uh, very difficult question to answer. So we will leave it at that. I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Josy Joseph, for that enlightening session. The floor is now open for a question and answer session. Those who have questions to ask, please unmute your mic and you could ask questions.
I agree. It's more to do with ChatGTP than anything else, I guess. Because AI as an idea, as I said earlier, has been around for many years, for decades actually. But uh, I would say it's a combination of factors. Now, this amount of digitization in our personal lives that got suddenly increased during the COVID years, and also the proliferation of these smart gadgets, the AIs, and all these apps. So we're ready for that kind of digitalized life. And then comes this AI, and what has happened in AI research or in this AI products in the last 3-4 years is something astounding. So we knew that this was coming, but we didn't realize that this would come so soon. So in the last 3-4 years, the world has changed, and it is just the beginning. And I guess in the next 5 years, the world will be completely different. We can't even imagine what life would be for 5 or 10 years from now, because ChatGPT or this AI will permeate everything everywhere. So I think that's it. So uh, and the younger generation being more uh, flexible to technology and to adapt to technology will always be more impatient and will be more excited and excitable, and so we'll have that paradigm shift very soon. And academics, yes, we won't be able to carry on academics or academic work the way we've been doing it for the last 30 or 40 years, right? So if a student has ChatGPT or AI, and well, as I said earlier, AI that knows infinitely more than all the teachers put together, and which is infinitely more patient than all the teachers, infinitely more imaginative, and the AI will give you this personalized, teaching, and all academic assistance. Uh, it is just mind-boggling, actually. I don't know what is going to happen. We can only speculate on the possibilities. Yeah. I'm HI, human intelligence. I'm capable only of responding as a human. I don't know if I'll be able to answer all the questions, but I'll try. Yes, but I would love to receive some questions or some responses. Sonia, you want to say something?
Hello, sir. So, if there are no more questions, I would take this
Yes.
opportunity to thank Professor Josy Joseph for giving us an enlightening session on AI. So, you spoke about, from Prometheus to robotics to ChatGPT to music industry, the pros as well as cons. So, I wish and I guess the insights that you gave have certainly set tone for this intellectually stimulating session that is the two-day conference ahead. Thank you so much, Professor Josy, sir. Uh,
Thank
now,
you.
yes, now without,
Thank you. Catch you later, Sam. I will leave now. I have a program to attend immediately after this. So, with your permission, I will leave the meeting now. Thank you so much. It's been an honor being with you.
thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And now, without further ado, it's my distinct honor to introduce our esteemed speaker, Dr. Arindam Das. He has an impressive background in language, literature, and cultural studies. He's uniquely positioned to shed light on the latest trends and further directions of artificial intelligence. Professor Arindam Das is an assistant professor a professor of language, literature, and cultural studies at Limes University, Bangalore. He's also the program director of MA Creative Writing. He holds a PhD in English from Vidyasagar University, West Bengal. He was the recipient of India Council Australian Studies Fellowship in 2010. He was nominated by Monash University, Melbourne, to represent the Indian academia during the Research in Australian Studies, and he delivered a paper at the first World Conference in Australian Studies at Monash University, Prato Center, Italy. I welcome Dr. Das to speak on AI and social science research, prospects and possibilities.
Thank you, ma'am. It's really nice to be here online, though. And so, I do I have the permission to share? Yeah, okay.
Sure, sir, you can.
So I can't see my PowerPoint. Okay. Oh, those are right. Just a moment. Why is the PowerPoint not being shown? Why do I have Chrome tab, Windows? Oh, that's okay. I am sharing it. It's showing Chrome tab, Windows, and entire screen. Which one do I share? Uh, Windows?
Entire screen.
Entire screen, right? Okay. Let me just check what happens. Yeah. Now, is it visible?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Uh, no, now, therefore, I was listening to the previous speaker. I'm sorry I joined late. This being Saturday, I have, and sorry to begin with an apology. I had a lot of other personal things to attend to, which is equally important, I believe. But I just heard a few words that were very correctly told by him, that we could just make conjectures for the days to come. And perhaps we can also understand that with the question that came from somebody, that why suddenly this surge of AI interest in academia. Now, this is nothing very new. For example, if I show you this particular paper, um, okay, so yeah, this was written in 1986, Programmability versus Creativity, Artificial Intelligence and Literary Theory. Strangely, this paper has only 1 to 2 citations, and I am pretty sure that within next 1 or 2 years, this paper will cross more than 100 to 200 citations, because this is one of the first papers to have been written about the bridging of gaps, if any, between artificial intelligence and literary theories. We'll come back to that. But prior to that, just to talk about what are the areas in which some major works in with the background of AI, or keeping AI as a critical discourse in mind, has been done. If we move to the next slide, you will find that the first book, now I have not mentioned any articles, there are many. I have just handpicked a few books that to me still being sanctum sanctorum of things. So the first book, The Artificial Intelligence and Economic Analysis. Now this is a study about neoclassical economics and how AI intervenes and orients the researches in neoclassical economics. Now, applications over here, the applications of AI over here that extends to the neoclassical theories are, they are basically meant to undermine actually the neoclassical theories, and it absolutely ignores the neoclassical theory in the quest of a far more compelling model in the field of analysis. And in few of these spaces that we have in this books, that even brings out a kind of a critical analysis. Moving from economics to the world of history, if you look into the next book, right, which focuses on Afro-Eurasian history between 1100 AD to 1500 AD. Now, this particular Rutledge focused book about computational engineering and historical memories. Now, Nanity is a very wonderful researcher. This person has evolved in the few years, and he works in the area of transdisciplinary research methods. And over here, for the first time, he brings in AI as a tool to better analyze the narratives of memory, of history, right? When we are talking about historical memory and machine understandability, vis-a-vis machine understandability, this particular book is a wonderful read, and I will suggest, because I've heard that many research scholars are here, and I was given to understand that many research scholars would be here. So I would like to tell people that, especially coming from liberal arts background, me coming from the same background, I would like all of you to go through this particular book. Right, this is a wonderful blend of philological accuracy. So they collect a lot of words, and then they go for a big data analysis. And through that, they also intervene it through historical methods, historic based media projects is also something that they take. They again do a big data analysis about that, run it through certain computational tools, and rewrite certain facets of history. So this is very compelling a book to read. The third book that you see is from the world of philosophy and artificial intelligence. Now, this is a very concise introduction to very key philosophical questions in artificial intelligence. So, this is not about philosophy and artificial intelligence. This is rather probing the domain of artificial intelligence through the prism of philosophy, right? So it raises certain philosophical questions about artificial artificial intelligence, and it brings in the perceptions, the point of views of people like Turing or Dreyfus or that of Leibniz, and rethinks artificial intelligence, right? If you go to the next slide, there are three more books over here. And this particular book is about culture studies. Many of us are into culture studies. I am into culture studies these days. So this is more about culture studies and AI, and an inclusion into critical AI study. That's how it reads, the cultural life of machine learning. So when we're talking about cultural life, this is both about the cultural studies as well as the material culture studies. Now, this is a book which is in which essentially historians, sociologists, and anthropologists have contributed with the perspectives from media studies, with the perspective of communication studies, with the perspective of cultural studies, and also from the information studies. Now, what is very important over here is that they bring out various facets or various creations, and the facets of those creations and what we term as creations, such as AI theaters, for example, the AlphaGo, the technological drama such as DeepMind's AlphaGo, and also talk about these days that what we hear about political forecasting, and how political forecasting could be done through AI, and how that can sort of create a kind of ideological, or become a kind of an ideological apparatus to control our political consumptions and political behaviors of us human beings. The next book is about ethics and philosophy again. It talks about the ethical artificial intelligence from popular to cognitive sciences. And this one is the algorithm for the people. This is more about political science that talks about, again, about democracy in the age of AI. If you go to the last set of books, you'll find there's a lot of work about feminism and AI that is happening these days. This is not something new, as the previous speaker was saying, but this has, because we'll have to understand that it is no more industry 2.0, it is no more industry 4.0, we are moving towards industry 5.0. Now, when we are moving towards Industry 5.0, AI is no more. Now, this is where perhaps the importance of AI in various disciplines these days. AI is no more a phenomenon that can be treated as an appendix to a system. AI has become not only integral but linchpinly central with Industry 5.0. And because the entire market system that so conditions our very existence, it has become very important that whatever presumptions we make, whatever production, whatever consumption we make, whatever I write and whatever I read, whatever I produce and whatever I consume, from that sense, as a prosumer, right, AI can no longer be kept at bay or as a secondary or tertiary uh, thought or an entity. It has become central to our very existence, right? So from moving from that, when we talk about artificial intelligence and strategic communicators, now I have been teaching communication for the last, because I travel a lot of paths, necessarily unnecessarily. I have been teaching business communication for the last 20 years now, with my background in aboriginal Australian literature that has nothing got to do with this, and currently I'm publishing in marketing, and I have published in literature as well. So I have seen the various worlds, the various perspective, and I've seen in the last 1.5 year, I would say, not even 2 years, it's post pandemic, I would say, how AI has become. So another reason is not Chat GPT. One of the primary reason was our virtual existence, not only work from home. Every human being's virtual existence was one of the primary reasons why today AI has seeped into our ontological being, right? Even when we are talking about translation study, now national NLP or national language processing is not something new. It has been going on now for decades. But these days, translation, especially when the borders have become way more permeable through our virtual, again through our virtual existence, translation has come to play a very major role, not only in the creative process, not only in the social science research, but in our daily existence, right? In the everydayness of our existence, translation has become very important. And it is over here that a big data analysis and when we have various chatbots who could communicate with us through various kind of languages have become very important. So in translation studies also, people who are doing with the hardcore languages, it has become very important. I know a friend of mine who is currently in Spain, who is working in translation, who is working with policies, linguistic, language-based policies, and also does a little bit of translation from Bengali to English, etc. And how AI has seeped into in this world of translation or language policies, etc. Because the work has become much more easier. Now, the question essentially which arises, which many of us will try to probe and not to answer perhaps, is that the relevance of a teacher, right? The relevance of a researcher with the presence. Now, this is a very strange question. Whenever there is a watershed moment, watershed scientific moment in the history, human beings have always felt threatened by its own Frankenstein. Having said that, human beings will remain human beings. I was asked once in another conference that, do you believe that artificial intelligence production on one hand and the human production on the other hand, when we try to compare when we try to compare both, the other being very perfect than the human creation, do you believe that the market for the humans production, when I say market for humans production, I talk about every kind of production as a teacher in the class to that of production of a textile manufacturer, of a loom product producers. Now, I have a very simple answer to it. Human beings are going to become way more costly affairs, right? It's easier to buy 5 computers in a university system. It's very difficult to maintain 5 very intellectualized professor when it comes in terms of money, because production by human beings would be rare. It would be one-time affair. It would be, I mean, especially when we are talking about a teacher in the class, it will have way more novelty, because it is me who I am feeding the program, the neural thought processes in the machine. Definitely there is nothing to worry, right? When Mr. Narayanan and Sudhamurthy were asked about this same question, are you worried about ChatGPT taking away jobs? He just ruled this option out. He said that the same question was asked whether computer would take away the jobs, and we have seen it has rather created more jobs. So it's more about understanding how we can use AI as academicians, as academic researchers, as social science researchers, especially as social science researchers, because I come from that background, as how do we can reutilize AI, right? Uh, Standard researches 20 years back, Borders and Home in Bharati Mukherjee's novels may not be anymore an appeal to the academia. Right? With all due respect to the writer who had created and the researcher who had done the work, now we will have to slowly think how we can, and you'll have to go transdisciplinary. And that has been the agenda of the government across the world, whatever their right or left leanings had been, that you cannot rule out the existence of a market, right, and its demands. Now, therefore, the government's education policies also, we have seen that they are promoting a kind of transdisciplinary studies. Now, I had a particular master degree program. It is MA in creative writing, and it's the first of its kind in India. Now, in this particular program, also, we have a course. I mean, we are intend to introducing a particular course initially in the form of a workshop, where we will teach student to contest, right, the AI generated uh, uh, creative things. Now, I'll show you a few of the. Um, Before I move ahead, I'll show you a few. Huh, a few of the websites. Now, if you go into this particular website, this is the AI song lyrics generator. Okay. Now, if I have to start at the very beginning, now if I say that I need a song that is about heartbreak, and then I select a genre, and then I say that I need a country music about that, and then I just try to generate it. Now, this is a very basic uh, school play kind of thing, it might seem. This is not something extremely intricate in the form of AI generation. But what it creates is really nice. It's already pre-fed with a few permutation combinations of data. So that's simple. Now, from simple, when you move to things which is way more critical, is this AI poem generator. Today in the morning, I was trying with this AI poem generator, and then I said, "Ask me not what death has taught me." Right? So this was the theme of the poem. Ask me not what death had taught me. And then it reads, ask me not what death had taught me, for its lessons are not easily grasped. It whispers secrets in somber melody and leaves a void that cannot be masked. Death has taught me cherish every breath and savor moments with whose I hold dear, to mend the reefs before it's too late, and let forgiveness dissolve any lingering fear. I'll stop over here. If you have noticed that this particular creation, it has a lisping rhythm. Prosodic structures are very important for any AI generator. In 2017, in a research that was carried out by Hopkins and Kaila, they had what they had done is something very interesting. They did feed the AI generators with the same theme as was worked upon by Shakespeare, Dickinson, Tennyson, Browning. Now, what they found was that post creation of the same, and when they went with that particular AI generated text of a Tennysonian theme and Tennyson's own um, produce, let's say the Lotus song, one generated by the AI and another the original one written by uh, Tennyson himself. And they come to a person X who never had any reading of the original Tennyson before. What was found was, very interestingly, common people had a better appreciation for the machine generated poetry that was there, that was churned out by a machine. What is very interesting over here is that the theory that they make, that every machine, therefore, if there, I mean, general human tendency is towards rhyme. General human tendency is towards the modern usage of language. General human tendency is more towards the simplistic way of understanding. One has to understand that just because I understand Derrida, Tennyson, Browning, or Tagore need not necessarily mean need not necessarily mean that the man on the road who is or who could have been an equal consumer of poetry beyond the ivory tower generation and hoarding of the same, sorry for that, appreciates something that is way more simpler. This is not to be mean the creation of the creators, the haloed creators, but this is a threat in the sense that the takers would be many. Having said this, that this is a threat for any new budding writer, especially in a course where I am teaching creative writing. This is also true that it takes aeons and generations to create another Tagore or another Tennyson or another Hopkins or another Donne or another T.S. Eliot. And in every generation, there is perhaps one. So there is no threat as such. The threat that is, it was always already a given, right? What AI generates is for the consumption of, not for the mass, but for the not for the class, but for the mass, right? Uh, so one need not be worried that there is no more scope for a new author to evolve, and for a consumer who intends to read things which are way more classic, right? Things which are way more curated by a human will always go for them. Okay, now let's come back, or let's proceed to something very important. This is MIT's lab production. This is something very interesting. This particular thing is called Shelley, the human AI collaborated horror story. Now, Shelley is a producer of human AI collaborated horror story. Now, this is very interesting. AI itself doesn't produce. One has to understand. AI is not a self-generating. It's only when it is being fed by certain commands, by certain desirous commands by a human agent, only then it can produce. Therefore, there is always a scope and a chance for rectification. Let's talk about Chat GPT. I have been using Chat GPT for a while now. I'm so sorry. Bad. I have been using ChatGPT for a while now for various purposes, especially clerical purposes. Us being in the academic system, we have not only to teach and do research, but we require help and assistance in various clerical forms. And it has been producing wonderful emails. At times, it can create questions that require tweaking by me before I send it off. So it has been a wonderful help. So what I'm trying to say is that any kind of, whether it is chat gpt, a very basic form now, or whether it is an MIT generated human AI collaborator, creator of horror stories, ultimately things have to be human centric. Now, in the last 1 or 2 years, I had written a few articles, and these articles were more about organizational behavior centric research, and then produced in the form of research articles, one in Germany, the other also a foreign publication. Now, in these, I talk about the concept of trust, right? A major issue regarding AI. To trust or not to trust, that is the question with the AI, and also the question of ethics, the question of power, the question of unnecessary agency, and then what's the solution? Well, the solution seems to be very simple. As all the theorists, thinkers, writers, researchers, we have been telling that let the AI now become human centric AI. AI cannot and should not be something that would go or work in silos by itself. Then things may be very dangerous. AI has also, as we can see, also helped us create various theater, right? So this is the AI generated theater. Okay. So if you can take a snapshot of this screen and then you want to see all these things, you're most welcome to do. Now, one particular work that I found very interesting and extremely useful for budding researchers who would like to bring in AI or AI as a critical discourse in their research thought is this particular book, right? As of now, the best collection of critical essays. So, this is about using AI for dialogue with text. I'm talking about people from the background of literature, right? So it talks about literature, cinema, psychology, and how AI, using AI for dialoguing with text. Now, this word dialoguing, this Bakhtinesque importance of both the man and the machine, right? And thus none having any is very important over here. That how can we enter into a kind of a, there should not be a sense of fear, but there should be a carnivalesque celebration while entering into this dialogue with the with machine generated text and with our kind of narratives. So when that happens, a brilliant, happy, a wonderful thing, and something that would be disturbing to the agencies of both the man and the machine, unnecessarily logocentric, logocentrized to sort of get entirely subverted, right? For all the researchers of AI, this is one book that I found very interesting, very important. Now, people will slowly see AI will become that AI studies or critical AI studies, which is already there, will become another extension of literary studies. We have been for a long while now, almost 10 plus years or 15 plus years, thinking that what after post colonial studies? And so what emerged is like almost like post colonial studies, a little different, was the decolonizing studies or the global south studies. The next branch of studies that is here to emerge and in a very strong way in literary theories or social science theories is that of critical AI studies. Now, this particular book, the Lutledge Social Science Handbook of AI, is one such book that has now initiated this discourse of critical AI studies. Okay. Now, having said all these, what is very important is in a research, why AI and how to do AI in research. Now, one has to understand that when I'm talking about AI as a research method, as a research technique, as as a research objective, also in certain sense, then there is an immediate split between the qualitative and the quantitative. Now, essentially, when I make this schism between the qualitative and the quantitative, AI is definitely more pro quantitative. Now, having said this, uh, the world of social sciences is a world of ambiguity, especially post Derrida or the Derridian philosophy that had sort of taken our entire research understanding by storm. Ours, or the social science theorists' world, is a world of proper ambiguity, deep ambiguity. Now, AI rules out ambiguity. Now, there is this blind spot that is happening over here. On one hand, I'm talking about a social science method that is ambiguous. On the other hand, I'm talking about a tool to rethink social science method that rules out ambiguity. The question is, what do I do, right? Now, again, there can be no one slide solution. There can be no 1 minute solution to this. But what I think is that when I use AI, when and if I use I should use AI as a tool, right? I should simply use AI as a tool. Now, this tool, as I have listed over here, could be a method of collecting data. Now, with uh, qualitative research, especially those of you who are working in the world of sociology, history, or maybe consumer studies or whatever, philosophy, psychology, you know there is a model called the Corbin-Strauss model. Now, the Corbin-Strauss model of qualitative research says that it is okay to have 10, 15, 20. Let's say I'm talking about an ethnographic reading, an interview based research. It's okay to have 10 or 20 sample size, because after that, if you find that from a peculiar demographic spot or site, you are getting the same replicated answers, then there is a data saturation. And then you can stop and you can come to a very micro understanding of a theory. Now, AI would help us perhaps more in a macro understanding, because AI can deal with big data. So we will use AI, if at all, in to no more have our size or samples or data set limited to generate a very micro perspective, which has its own importance, where we might not need at all AI. But whenever we are doing a macro research, whether it's a macroeconomics, whether it's a macro marketing, macro sociology, and even macro understanding of a periodic history or periodic literary output, then we can use AI as a tool. But if you go to the next part, right, this analytical portion, we can take its help, but ours would be the critical understanding. Okay, so this understanding, this analysis, right, this part, I think human beings or a human researcher should take more importance than in the data collection part of it. For example, in the data collection part of it, we can have automated text analysis, we can have a predictive modeling. Now, predictive modeling can be a part of analysis, yes, but only after you have made, only when a human researcher has made the analysis. The next part could be modeling, right? Now, this may not be important for literature, but for linguistics or for certain other associated fields of literature, this may be important, or even important for economics or psychology or political science. So after the human has intervened with the analysis part of it, which may be, with all due respect, a little bit ambiguous, because that's the post-Derridian, you know, post-structuralist understanding of the world in which we are. Because AI will always have a tendency to herk us back, take us back to the world of structuralism, which we are done with. We cannot afford to, because then that would be reiterating capitalism, because then that would be reiterating a kind of a very non-fragmented, homogeneous, ruling out minority kind of an understanding of the world. Therefore, our analysis should be, could be, maybe deconstructively splitted. That's absolutely fine. And it is based on this that we can have a predictive modeling in the future. Similarly, there are other things. This may not be the right place to talk about all this, because this is a workshop based kind of a thing when we are talking about how to use AI in research. For example, bias detection. When we are talking about bias detection, the next question that when I'm talking about bias detection and mitigation, which is something that AI does in a wonderful way. Now, the point is, should I not celebrate bias? Why should I mitigate it? So therefore, what is very important is that we will use AI, but we'll have to use AI in research with a cautiousness, with not letting the final say be that of AIs, and human being can be very picky and choosy into where and to how much to apply AI, right? Now, with this, I come to the next thing. What are the research possibilities? There are ample research possibilities, especially when we are talking about social science research, because this is one area which is, uh, I do not know if I'm being wrong in the choice of my word. It's way more virgin. It has not been tried and tested as of yet. For example, the post and decolonial realities, global south, and AI. Already there is only one work, research work, that is available, and a lot could be done, right? Literary theory, as I have already shown you, right? There is already some work that is being done in and around literary theory. One work that I had liked, right? Yesterday I was reading it again. It's a second read that I had given because I wanted to speak about it a little today. This again is a very uh, how to put it. This is not a very well cited article as of now, but MK and Anil both are two very wonderful Turkish researchers. The first one is from the world of comparative literature. The other one is the world of uh, I think, information technology. So they, in the Journal of Artificial Intelligence Research, which is one of the best journals of the world about artificial intelligence. Now, in this particular journal, they have talked about bridging the gap between machine learning and literary theory. I'll urge all of you to just go through this particular article. This is a wonderful article that will tell you that what and that will open a lot of dimensions about you. Now, what is very interesting about this particular article is, just as the previous speaker, just as me, and perhaps even the writers of this article, they leave you with a lot of questions towards the end, right? Just as we say it's open ended in research, right? AI tends to close end researches, but a social science research keeps you with lot of possibilities and opportunities. So they also open a lot of questions pertaining to ethics, lot of questions pertaining to the acceptance, etc. Now, with this, I'll come to end. I'll expect a lot of questions rather, because if there are research scholars, then I believe that if I can be of some help today, I'd feel very happy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Arindam Das. The stage is now open for a question and answer session.
Hi, good to meet you. Come again, you're breaking. Hello, Sam. Yeah, yeah, this is better. Okay, by materials, what do you mean, Sam? For example, can you give me a quick example? Ah, you mean reference materials. Yeah. Now, okay, right. Number one, there are two, three types of materials that we'd like to speak about. First, AI is a tool, correct? So AI, if I use AI as a research tool, there are ample materials. However, you have to go transdisciplinary. If you're doing a research on, new historical criticism or the material studies about the Victorian age or about the Renaissance age or about the Restoration age. Uh, the material first is the data that we talk about, which is the raw data, which is there in archives. Now, one has to collate those data, run an AI through it, take the help of uh, somebody from another discipline, right? Who has an access and an understanding of how to run AI. Now, slowly, what is going to happen is that you will find, perhaps, Sam, not so soon, but in the days to come, because we are opening up the gates for transdisciplinary studies from the school level itself. You will, and all these kids these days, they are so very savvy with the digital part of it, with the technological part of it, with the data churning part of it, that even if somebody comes to a social science research, you'll find that they know how to run various statistical AI tools to understand or decipher these data. Yes, might be way more easier for a full professor of a university where I have a lot of help, uh, technical help, and it's a challenge for a research scholar in that way. But nonetheless, there is no harm learning certain basic things, such as ANOVA. SPSS is now a tad backdated. One can learn tools such as, um, it's a little high end, such as Python or R. And then when you run it, because a research has to be a very deep rooted one when you have to do it through AI. And then with that, with the help of that, you can definitely find out good results. Again, analysis should depend on you. Now, reference material is not needed when you use AI as a tool. When you are not using AI as a tool, uh, then there may be some other, because you are not trying to see AI as a set of data on which you'll work. AI is not equal to Amitav Ghosh's shadow lines on which you are writing a sort of, how to say, a critical essay. AI is rather a tool which will help you analyze Amitav Ghosh's shadow lines. Are you getting the difference? So if it is a tool, you do not need a lot of reference material. So I have been telling my students, one of my student is very savvy with, PhD scholar is savvy with the various statistical tool and data analysis tool. So that is very important. I think I've been able to answer your question, Sam. Tell me. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Now, there are certain publication houses who have not yet agreed to. For example, if I know, then Elsevier, Springer, they have not agreed to uh, AI being a co-creator in research. However, there are certain research paper where you have uh, enlisted the AI tool or the AI itself as a co-author of the work. This is one, to answer your question towards the end. So, if you give, if you understand prompt engineering, because you are the one, as I said, who would prompt people, I do not want to use very technical terms over here. If you know these prompts, proper prompts, it can definitely churn out a lot of results. This is one thing. Second, in literature, we are yet to see if there would be a co-author who would, I mean, a literary critique, I mean, not a literary creator, because that's there already. Man and machine creating novels, poems, and that's being read. Now, what we are waiting is to see if in social science research also we can have ChatGPT as one of our co-creators. As of now, there are no instances, but this is not to rule out that there won't be any. Because definitely, when your entire analysis is being done, okay, entire analysis, the data analysis part of it is being done by, let's say, ChatGPT or by some other tools, you should have to get credit. The criticism part of it is definitely what you are going ahead and doing. But then that machine requires some kind of acknowledgement. Perhaps this is the post-human ethics that should come from a man towards the machine. I don't see it as plagiarism, non plagiarism. I see more of it as a discourse of ethics, where my ethical stance should be very clear that if a part of the work has been done entirely by a machine, maybe through my prompt and through my engineered prompt rather than prompt engineering, then definitely I would say that the machine requires some credit from my end. Yes, it does, right? And as far as prompt engineering is concerned, uh, yes, it's coming up in a big way. But then certain basic prompts, without going into the details of how to make this prompt. For example, um, control shift alt shift del, the three finger, we not know why it is happening, but we know the window will open, the taskbar will open, right? So a list of such prompts for this thing, chat gpt, it's already taking a lot of circulation in linkedin and whatsapp and all, and I have tried them, it's good. So these prompts are already there, how to write, right? So it's based on natural language processing and how the machine or the chat GPT responds to the NLPs. So those kind of prompts are there. Very soon books would be out. I don't know if the books are already out about these prompts and how to use chat GPT. There is a lot of an FTP, lot of paid courses about chat GPT. It's more like initial days when we had to learn Word and how to use Excel and Word. Excel still is there, but nobody pays money anymore to learn Word. So at one point of time, people will become so savvy using it. Correct? Sure.
Good morning, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Who's
Thank you so
this?
much. Sir, I'm Durga.
Hi, Durga.
My question is, if you're taking AI not as a
Yes.
tool, but
Yes.
as an area within, area of research,
Yeah.
within like cultural studies or so, what would be the research scopes in that?
There are ample research scope, Durga, because I have already shown you a few books, especially the critical AI studies book, right? So, for example, if I'm still sharing my screen that I am, the Rutledge Social Science Handbook of AI. If you download this particular book and you know how to download it through LibGenius and all, if you read this particular book, it will open up new vistas for you. What I
Okay.
have seen in most of the cases, it's an ethics based or the power discourse based research that is happening, as is wont in any kind of social science research. So whether it is like ethically correct, the post-humanist questions of ethics that is there, then it is also about the power discourses between man and the machine when I'm talking about AI. Essentially these are the two major areas. Now you can split it up, definitely, right? Definitely that this book will give you a lot of opportunities in understanding that what are the recent areas in which there is this journal called the Journal of Human Society and Computers, I think, right? Or Human Society and Computers. So you can look into those journals also to find an understanding.
Right, sir.
Okay. So, for example, critical urban studies and AI. For example, critical gender studies and AI, the LGBTQIA and AI.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if it is a LGBTQIA lens that you are using to understand a set of AI generated poems,
Mm.
are you getting my point? That are these gendered poems? Are these gender neutral poems? Do the machine or have the machine been fed with sensibilities towards gender equity?
Okay.
So these could be various kind of areas in which you can probe and think, I believe.
All right. Thank you so much, sir.
Do we have more questions? All right. So, That was indeed an insightful session by Dr. Arindam Das. I think the research scholars out here would have most benefited by this session. Thank you, Dr. Arindam Das, for such a wonderful session. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
madam. Thank you, Madam Lucy. Thank you so much. I'll take your leave if I may, because I have some other urgent things to attend to.
Yes, sir. Sure, sure.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
sir.
Thank you.
Participants, please note we will have a short break and resume at 12 p.m. So you may go for a short break and come back by 12 o'clock. Thank you. Yeah. I request Dr. Anuj to take over the session. He will be speaking on the topic to AI or not to AI, leveling the playing field in an English language classroom. Welcome, Dr. Anuj.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sonia. And I would like to extend my gratitude to all the organizers for conducting this event. And I'll just, without much ado, get into the topic that is currently trending. I hope it is visible to you. Uh, Thank you. So I'll just take on with the part about how AI came to take in the prominent position in today's debate and the rise of AI and so on. So it all started with the AI, the Chat GPT capturing the public imagination and saying that about there is this doomsday picture that it is created, and it would be the question about what exactly is this particular phenomena, what are the implications that it is going to have for us, what are the challenges that it is going to come in, and also about what does it have in store for us. So I would like to trace the trajectory of AI and take it to the point where it becomes relevant for the English language classroom, and on the way just look at a few tools that are currently available and the kind of work that we've been able to do at Christian College with for the students in who have been getting a chance to work with AI. So right, so AI is artificial intelligence, which is a kind of a language model which is talking about the use of artificial intelligence techniques to generate responses. In a way, it's about creating an intelligence that is similar to us in form and so on. So creating in one's own image, in God's own image, that can kind of an allegory that suddenly comes to mind. It's just that it's you're trying to create a system which is able to create responses like you can expect from a normal human being. So the beginnings can be traced back to the support system that we had in terms of like the personal assistants, the digital personal assistants that we had, like Siri. The point where it could tell you the weather, it could ask you, where it could crack the jokes for you, and kind of responses, and the it would exactly mimic instances where it would it would throw a frown and then appear as if it is irritated with you and so on and so forth. But then the point was, it is always just a very, very vague shadow of the human intelligence where it happens. Of course, with the coming of Sophia, things change quite rapidly, and we can see that. Sorry, hello. I hope I'm audible. Okay, sorry. So, with the coming of Sophia, there was a part about the role of intelligence taking on a model where it could mimic us to a greater extent. From a semblance of a mimicking, it was able to have a greater accuracy in how quickly it was able to produce things. And today, we stand with the situation where the responses are actually created rather than being mimicked. So what does AI do? That question is like it's just able to generate responses on the basis of what it has been trained on. Now, the quick responses that it comes to, and the alarming or the uh, scary part about the answers, that they are very, very accurate. And the range of questions is what makes it even more complex. And it adds to the public euphoria about AI as a kind of a danger that comes in. Where does it find applications? It all starts with the customer support. You'll realize that suddenly every single website worth its salt has got a bot right now, which would provide customer support. It would even do the language translation. And the part is that it has gone far more sophisticated to even handle with creative writing and so on. So what we see is that the stages of artificial intelligence has been moving right from the the kind of a machine learning, which is at the level of an ANI, which is a kind of a neural interface, to the level of an AGI, where it is able to look at it currently. And the way it is progressing, by the time it reaches the stage 3, you will find that it has become far more complex, and it is able to do things as naturally as you would have in the case of a human child. So these are the basic evolution that we had, starting with the Alexa, Cortana, and the others. And slowly, it has been moving up to the level of the artificial general intelligence. The artificial general intelligence is where the machine is learning to actually use language as a child would do it. But the challenges come in at the stage 3, when you have a machine consciousness, when you have suddenly a machine that realizes that it is aware, or it is aware that it is a unique entity to itself. It's about like almost like the parallel being about cloning. If imagine being able to create a human being, or rather a being, sentient being, or otherwise, which is able to be aware that it is different from others. Now, there are a lot of questions that come up as of with the AI. We'll just try to look into a slightly technical point of view so that we understand a little better. So it seems almost magical. Now, how is it that the chat GPT is able to generate things? You give it some responses, questions, and in no time it's just making responses. So what it does is, primarily, if you look at the language as a system, there is a transference of encoding and decoding that takes place. But what ChatGPT does is, and it's pretty good at what it does, is it's able to go through an entire series of ways in which it can create text for itself. So it starts with a pre-processing, where you give in the input, which is like into a token. The tokenizer then puts it into priorities and ranking, and then it goes through a process of encoding, where it, just like a human, it goes through a process of putting it into form of a code, and then the same thing is decoded at the level of a binary level, and then the actual machinery starts working. The data that has been fed into it, I mean, that's a huge amount of data. Imagine having access to um, the point that is given to it. It could be anything from the chat feeds for last 5 years, or it could be the data that has been taken from various online interfaces. There have been several instances where it's known to take in data from the Twitter feeds. Of course, there's always a question about the source of these things, but that's what most of the AI companies have been silent about. But then, after learning from these inputs that's already given to it, it goes through a process of creating a text, and then it takes to the final post processing, where it tries to tweak them and suit it. So the core of is actually about the text generation and the post processing. That is what brings in the refinement. So you had actually translation and other software tools available, but they were very rudimentary and they had major challenges and flaws. It is very easy for you to find out if it has been done by a machine. Now, technically speaking, I mean, it could be like a 5-year-old. It's a huge library. ChatGPT does is like it's like a huge library, only that it becomes smarter with every time you have an interaction with it. So I'm just using a clip from the movie about the man who goes in the future, and where the entire library is the Smithsonian library is actually in the form of an AI, and it runs through the whole thing. So what happens is that the more you interact with that, it gets better at that, what it does. Now, the question that comes before us is it a hero? What are we really trying to understand from the point of technology which we are really unsure of? Like they say in Harry Potter, everything that is unknown, undefined, is a matter of fear or a matter of reverence. Depends on that. So it's just like I would like to take it at this point as something which has got two sides, and it all depends on us about how we want to deal with that. It's about the kind of interactions that we plan with it. So there are two sides to it, and I'll just try to be very neutral observer to the two things. Now, how does the AI actually have an impact in the long run? Now, when you look at that, it starts with the kind of an improvement in the efficiency. So what it does is the kind of the long, laborious legwork that used to take some significant amount of time, it is cut drastically, and you're able to provide a kind of a customer services which is instant. Now, when you look at a human interface, it is always something that is limited by time, fatigue, and other factors. So imagine like in the customer care as executive has a bad breakfast and he comes into office, he carries that impact, that mood onto this service. The quality of service suffers. But the AI one, the same thing. It will continuous process, no changes. The second part that brings in again is about the addition of creativity. How is it that you can bring greater creativity into a way that you work? So that is why you will have to look in terms of how is it that the quality or the intricacies of language are brought into your interaction. Imagine that you suddenly realize it's raining and you realize that the AI is talking about the rain. It's talking about what it means. Like it suddenly starts talking about a petrichor and how the smell of the rain is something unique while talking to a customer who is dealing with the food and beverage industry. So it's a kind of a challenge that comes with that, but it's definitely what makes it far more interesting. And of course, when you talk about automation, it brings in the advantage of having the ability to do lots and lots of boring stuff again and again without fail and without errors. That's the automation advantage that it brings up. Now, of course, it has its own set of problems. I'm sure that you would have heard about the newspaper articles, the doomsday kind of ones, which would talk about the problems, like in terms of people losing their jobs. That's true. There is a possibility about the human workforce being replaced by AI to some extent. But how it would be replaced is a different thing altogether. There are these concerns about that if human beings are actually having jobs which are repetitive, they are having jobs which are kind of ones which involves very limited kind of data and its usage. These can be taken over, and there's a possibility that they will do it much better. Now, I would like to take this at a point about an analog about the calculators. Imagine when the first calculators or the computers were first introduced. There was an instance where people would compete with that and say that, look, I'm going to do it faster than a computer, the calculator, and losing miserably. It's just that, we took that in our stride and we realized that there are jobs that computers can do better. And we stopped competing with calculators. When computers were introduced, there's a huge outcry in Kerala, especially. There are a lot of questions about do we really need computers when there are other ways to do it. There were a lot of protests and so on. But today, you will find that the very same entities that we are protesting are actually using them actively. So it's all that I believe that technology is there and it is becoming better. And there are new avenues. In fact, I firmly believe that there will not be job losses, but rather that these jobs will be, taken over by other people who actually are adept at using the AI tools. There is a question about the biases and also the inaccuracies that we will discuss a little down the line. But there are these privacy concerns because AI actually has a proclivity to be a huge consumer of data, and every single data that you have, every single interaction, there are questions about how and when it can be used and in what manner it can be used. And of course, the part about the over dependence of technology and its over dependence does have problems because it does raise questions in the kind of a classroom about how much is too much, and so on. It does raise questions on that aspect. So, like I said, AI is remarkable for its ability to actually create unique pieces of work. Now you can see how AI has been used to generate pictures of toddlers as they happened to be at different aged points, and some examples of them. They are quite curious because it fascinates us because that a machine is able to create something of its own. It's almost like saying, wow, at one point of time, we talked about a point situation where computers can never write poetry, but hey, they're doing it now. Now, we have seeing people using AI in numerous number of ways to actually re-understand, let's say, the perceptions of history. Now, AI Ashoka has a very different kind of a feature from the one that we are used to, the drawings in the history books. There would be you'll see that there's a notions about how each characters were, as in if for example your notions about characters were induced through, let's say, the comics of Amar Chitra Katha or the Twinkle, for example, you'll realize that there's a huge change in our understanding that is being questioned. Shivaji, for example, has a different character altogether, and his persona that is being created by AI is quite different. And of course, there were a lot of criticism about when the AI generated Akbar image came out, and the AI Akbar was said to be quite similar to Genghis Khan and the others, and so on. But these are kind of a dangers that are coming up, when one that we will have to look into in greater detail. There are major issues that come up. You can see, for example, the concept of different states when it was given to AI, and it was asked to envision images based on that. So these are kind of ones, and these are kind of ones which create significant public outroar. And the challenges is that AI is quite crude in many ways. Like, so for example, this is the picture about a state of Bengal being represented, and it has hardly any logic to the whole thing. One was the kind of comments that was there on Twitter was about the kind of where is that such a kind of a hilsa fish could be found, and how is that such a hilsa fish could actually be there. So the those who studied the flora and the fauna would have serious questions about how is it possible such a fish can be created. It's just impossible that they would talk about. And of course, there are the more mundane challenges about the woman actually having 7 fingers, 8 fingers, and she is it's inside the fish. Her hand is inside the fish. The fish is about to bite that. It defies logic in many ways. So this is just a kind of serious faults that you may find with that. And of course, there are numerous fails also as far as the AI is concerned, because it's just not possible that you would have such a fishlet and you would be having your fine Chinese fine Kanjivaram silk actually to cut fish or whatever you want to do with that. So AI has a huge number of follies which we will have to deal with that, but these are major questions that come up. So, like I said, there are two sides to the whole thing. But the question is, what are the kind of ways that we deal with that? I firmly believe that this is the kind of a time when English literature, language as departments should be seriously looking at the role of AI and the ways to moderate it. That's a kind of a thing which I believe that currently, the critical humanities are the best positioned ones to actually take serious steps into that. Now, I know there are a lot of concerns like, will AI replace teachers? That's the kind of a single, elephant in the room. What is the future for us? Does it really change our lives, and what does it do? What I firmly believe is that it's a great tool wherein you can empower knowledge to a great extent. We can change the entire way we handle knowledge, and that can be done. Now, what we see in our classrooms today is that the talents that you have is quite different. They may be very vocal. They may be, having great demands, and there's a lot of learner autonomy that is being sought today. So it's all a chance for us actually to boost the productivity by enabling these tools. I think the single biggest advantage that you can have in a language classroom is about how to streamline the communication to ensure that you are able to produce, a steady line of communication, and you can build bridges. AI could be that. AI could be that bridge that connects these worlds. So I'll just quickly look into the few tools that I've been using in my classroom with my students. We started with a couple of programs for the first year students. Now, what we felt was that when the transition from a school +2 to a college first year degree program is actually a kind of a bother. So we thought that why not use this particular time to actually introduce them to a few of these tools and get them a chance to understand that. So we felt that generating an interest in the subject should really be something very current. So we designed a bridge course wherein we ran it for an entire 10 days, where they did not have any regular classes, but you had 5 hours every day where you dealt with various technologies that are emerging and so on. So you started from yoga to down to actually financial literacy, and even modules on how to have a healthy lifestyle. So while doing that, as far as the English department concerned, we were actually working with them on some of these AI tools that we can use for language teaching. So we one of Warmest AI is one of the email writing assistant that we tried with them. We actually give them a chance to use a tutor, an AI tutor, to actually write emails. So we give them different situations, and then there's a whole lot of fun involved in what would you write in this scenario. Like, for example, you've asked somebody to join you for a movie and you just forgot it. So how do you write an email, acknowledging the fact that you're sorry about what happened, but you also wanted to make up. So the AI suggestion was actually quite different. The AI said, wrote an email where it says, "Thank you for waiting for me, and I know that you value me so much that you spent maybe an hour or two waiting for me before going back disappointed," and so on. So what it did was actually, the student found it quite interesting, was that instead of apologizing, the AI came up with an idea of actually appreciating someone who was waiting for you. So that's the kind of a change that we were trying to try out with that. So it was quite hilarious with especially the one about there were some fails also when we got the AI to think about how to convey requisition forms and so on. So trying to get an AI to understand what a bucket is was a major challenge. So they had to describe what a bucket is to an AI and then get it to write a requisition form. So suddenly they also realized that AI is not so infallible, and there are so many things that they are still having an advantage on. Anyway, so the next thing that we did was actually give them a chance to use a roam around AI. Roam around is an AI which actually helps them to plan a tour. How do you plan a tour to a certain place, and what you can do? So we also give them a chance to actually create a bot on their own, and give them a chance to try it around. So some of them, this Prabhas from Cochin, and they wanted to try something like that. So we give them an opportunity to create a bot, and for a moment, I'll just switch and share that particular slide. that portal. Okay, so I hope it's visible now. Right, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So now you have, this is the portal where you can create a bot. So they had created something called Bot Kuchikaran. So they wanted to create that, and then they've been running new things. So all fun things about coaching were included. So you given prompts like you ask it to, for example, write a song on Marine Drive. So then the bot actually with tries to create a song. Of course, you'll realize that there's a lot of funny things about it, and there are a lot of fails and follies. But it's trying to speak in Malayalam. That's what really makes it exciting. So that it's like a bot that uses Malayalam to generate English text and so on. So it's just that it actually brings a lot of fascination and fun into how things can be done. So, for example, we even asked it to, prepare a song on Cochin with references to actual people, places, and food of Cochin. So, they got some things correct, like the Chotanikara temple, they got it correct. They got Kakinad correct. But later on, when we asked them to create something on Irani cafes, it somehow mistook that in MG Road for MG Road in Bangalore. So that's a kind of a challenge that can happen with that. So, but it's a great fun because the students get a great chance to try out these thing on AI, and they started planning on how to use tools for different areas in Kerala and so on. Okay, coming back, we then actually give them also a chance to work with some more AI. So we tried Codify because many of them thought that literature is all about codes. So we said no, not really. There are so many other things that you can do with that. So we thought about how to design content for various platforms. So for example, if you wanted to run an Instagram feed and you wanted to have content generated on a specific time, how do you actually use AI to do that? So how do you actually try to connect it with a couple of jobs that are coming up? So recently there was a particular job post. So we also discussed with the students about the new jobs that are coming up. What AI supported jobs could be coming up. So one of the jobs was like for a fintech company where they wanted to have a chief meme officer. So the meme officer's job was actually to be able to make content on financial education, so that you are able to create, let's say, a part on, for example, how to make it approachable to people. So that's the kind of things that we tried in. So again, a lot of humor involved in these things, and what we could do from there. So we even got them a chance to try out something on LinkedIn using the Codify. We try to give them something on LinkedIn talent blog. So so what if it means to hire a chief meme officer? So we tried out some of the things there. So while we talked about codes and others and the AI based on that, we also took the chance to bring in about Twig, where you can create a digital twin. So imagine like you can have a clone, and suppose you have like two classes at the same time. What do you do in this case? So we said, okay, you can have a clone. So we took a page out of Harry Potter, and he said like you can invent a digital twin, and so based on the data that you give, you can have a digital twin which will do things exactly the way you would do things. Like I said, these are all fraught with lots and lots of errors, but it can have a lot of fun in a classroom. So it helps the students to actually understand the kind of errors that they come up with. So we as language teachers, we always find a challenge about how to correct a student. And today, students don't want to be corrected. So how do you ensure that the correct, you run the process? Because correction is a very important part of learning. More than the studying, it's an important part of learning. So how do you do that? So imagine that they are able to talk to themselves in a way that it will highlight the errors that come up, and then once that is done, you can even try to correct some of those things. Next, we also give them a chance to actually, use on a speech coach. pronunciations. How do you actually get them to understand retroflexes or differences, and how is it different from that? So Speako is a speech coach which actually listens to you what you say, and based on the models that are already fed into it, it is able to correct you or point out the areas where you think that you need to have a greater approximation. So this is a tool that worked quite well, and they had a lot of fun in the classroom. And Speako actually sometimes has a way that it would correct you with the humor. So there it cracks a few jokes on the kind of errors, and it's a kind of a self-depreciating humor that it creates. I think the AI ML tool has even got the part about a self-depreciating humor. So it's like it mocks itself and it says, "Oh well, I have been trying it. Well, you got this correct. I've been trying it for ages, and I still never could that," and so on. So that's something that Speako does very well. This is another part where we found that harnessing creativity for a classroom could be very useful. So we used a tool which is called a Reimagine, wherein we encourage them to try to go to different parts of the college, click some places, and then try use the AI engine to look about how else it could be redesigned. So currently, we even had a contest. It's still going on where we are working on how to redesign a canteen. So because most of the students felt that canteen is the real chill out place that they have. So they talked about how it can be redesigned. So what we've thought is that the best entries will be taken up to redesign the canteen, and we could have a whole new cool space. So that's something that we've been trying to work with that. Reimagine actually makes it possible that you can take a picture of that and you can think about the same thing redesigned in many ways. You can have it in retro, you can have it in a futuristic model, it can be even maybe vintage. So any of these models, it helps you to recreate that on the basis of a few pictures that you click. And of course, Conjure is the one that we had great fun because it's like Conjure Library AI is where you can click on any book of your choice and the book talks to you. So we had a couple of questions like, does Harry Potter suffer from Oedipus complex? So it gives you a chance to raise a question, and it gives you answers to that. And so imagine that how to get someone interested in reading a book. So you give them an opportunity to actually speak to this book, and based on your responses, you can get them to become far more interested in the subject and keep moving that. Because then we were also thinking about the kind of jobs that are coming up. One of the jobs that we believe could be coming is in terms of the fact checking. So how do you actually ensure the consistency and the accuracy of the data that you put up? So one of the jobs that we will find is coming up would be fact checkers, and also, of course, about how do you actually improve something like the experience of a website. So UX developers is another area that we believe we have plenty of jobs coming up, and that could be based on how you're able to use like technology, an engine like Marmov AI, which helps you to create different blogs, and it will give you the structure, but you still have to get the ideas, but it gives you a great chance to actually use it and learn from that. And like I said earlier, every single post that you put on that, the AI becomes better. So greater interaction, it's almost like telling a child. So the more you interact with the child, the more the errors it creates, the more mistakes it makes, the better it learns. So Marmov is actually one which is quite useful, will help you with a variety of content generation. You know, Textify AI is a tool that makes it possible for you to predict where you have important things to come up. Imagine like you have students who watch a film but are unable to know where the key areas are, or where are the jokes, where are the punchlines, where should you laugh. So Textify AI actually helps you with the what it did there was actually give them the script for different films, and then get them to watch the film without the audio, and get them to identify areas where you should pay attention to, where should you laugh, and so on. So Textify actually is a kind of a tool that makes it possible. So it makes it possible for a absolute novice to actually start predicting where the humor is, or where is it that you should laugh and where is it you should be paying attention to. So Textify is something that helps you to read smartly. So that's the reading tool that's there. And of course there is open read AI. Now this I teach a lot of students in the general English classes, so I have zoology and botany students whom I spend a lot of time. And so one of the challenges that we were trying to prepare them was like, how do you read scientific journals? Now many of them find it difficult to digest the language, they find it difficult to comprehend the data, and even to maybe make an abstract out of the whole thing. So Open Read actually is a tool whereby you can give it articles, even which are based on magazines like Nature magazine. It presents the whole thing in a much more easy to understand, easy to access format, and so on. So Open Read, for example, gives you a chance to identify the core ideas rapidly. Instead of reading the whole thing, it puts them into smaller paragraph heads, and click on that, you get the whole idea. If you want to have a different point of view, it is much easier to access. If you want to know the tone of the paper, that's also there. So that's a kind of thing. But let me warn you that the tone of identifying the tone of the paper, whether it is neutral or scientific or objective, that can sometimes be a little hazy, but it's pretty good for a beginner. Of course, one of the major challenges that we get is actually do the correction. As a teacher, we do enormous amounts of writing corrections. So that's a tool where co-writing AI is quite handy, where you can get the students to write, and the handwriting can be uploaded onto the platform, and it is a writing tutor, so it gives you more corrections on that and so on. So you will have to moderate it, all right, but it takes out the imagine like if it correct the 8 to 10 pages time it would take for you, and if you have a class which is a large number, so it can be a challenge. So the whole thing, if it is moderated through co-writer, the advantage is that you can actually focus more on the corrections. It is fairly accurate in terms of the edits that are required, and it helps you to give them very clear pointed instructions on what they need to do. And it's been my experience that if you tell them 5 points where they really have to work on, it gets a better response than saying that, okay, you take a red pen and start marking all of them. So that's a kind of a tool that's been I found a very useful one. Of course, there are these benefits of automation that I would strongly recommend. Is it like the onboarding of students? So right now we are the first year students coming in, getting them to join the program, getting them to understand each of the things that happens in a college, the process of let's say the online attendance that we have in Christian College, the process of actually ensuring that their records are maintained there. All these things actually make a big difference with the support of AI. The student experience where they can constantly give feedback makes a big support. So during the 10-year bridge course, that 10-day bridge course that we had, every single session gives them a chance to actually give a rating to that. So this whole experience of learning, it makes them feel that they have a greater say in things. And the advantage is that it helps us to focus on the more important things. I remember like taking the attendance in this registers, it would take 15-20 minutes for a general classroom. So all that gets automated. It saves a lot of time, and we can spend that better time and money for better things. Of course, I'm always one for actually reducing the the use of resources like paper and others. This is a very good tool for that. And the workflow with optimization is something it does very well. So for example, when do they join, what are the things that they do each day, even something like flipping the classroom. So during the program, every day in advance they get a chance to know what is going to come in. So they get notifications on that, okay, on Tuesday, third hour, they are going to be looking at prefaces, prefix and suffixes, and some notes on that would be given. So the idea is that it gives them the chance to be prepared better for a program. So that's something that we found to be useful. So coming back, it's all about choices that we have in terms of using it. It can have major repercussions in terms of what you want to do with that. There are enormous amounts of tools which make it easy for us. It all depends on how we want to use it and so on. Our experience has been very exciting, and the students were really eager to try out various tools. And I think that helps to get students understand that it's not so complex. It fosters better confidence in them, and I think I've covered all the bases with that. But I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Anuj. The floor is now open for question and answers.
Hi, sir. Thank you so much for introducing the different tools that we can use in the classrooms. So I have a question. You have talked about content generation. So can these AI systems inherit gender bias? Will they?
Absolutely, they will. They will. Not just gender. That's what I was just. Thank you for bringing up Betty. Is that Betty?
Yes, sir.
So thank you for bringing that up, Betty. So what I found there was that if you look at the images generated, they are huge problems. I mean, because they seem to attract so many questions and debates and even outright problems. People would have huge arguments with that. So see what happens is AI. We all need to keep in mind it has to be moderated. It has to be controlled because it's like a 5-year-old. You can't give a 5-year-old a gun and say, right, it's a very effective thing. You can try it out. It'll figure out how to use it, but you can understand the dangers that it poses. So the reason why I feel that the critical humanities actually are rightly placed is because currently no other discipline would know what to do with it. It's not that you can bring in programming and control the whole thing because it's way beyond programming now, and it's at a point where that I believe that the only option is actually to get it to learn better, and that depends on what inputs we give them. Now, you will find it using words which are outrightly unacceptable. The N word and the F word and all so on, because it believes that it doesn't know what is wrong and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So it can have serious repercussions, and in terms of content generation, we'll have to tread very carefully. They're useful tools, no doubt, but then we need to be very careful about what we do with them. You can't give it unfettered access. So when we were working with Po, for example, AI Po, with those on, we were actually ensuring that we were moderating them before they were getting. So instead of giving the students directly access to those websites, we were asking them to moderate it through the medium of a teacher, so that we could filter out a few things.
Yeah, human intelligence do need to work.
Yeah, it's not intelligent enough.
Yeah, it's not intelligent. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for the response.
Of course, there is a part that I did not take up was the part about the paywalls. Currently, all the major AI platforms, they only offer it to a certain extent, and beyond that, it's all there is a paywall, and it can be quite expensive. Open source is AI is there, but it doesn't have the same amount of refinement that you'd find in the others, and the it's almost like what you had with the Zoom and the other video conferencing sites. So it would take a bit of a time and bit of more moderation and even legislation to control it, but it will have to be done. But the opportunities are huge. There are lots and lots of things that can be done. I think it's relevant more to the present, where you have attention deficit problems. You have a problem with the lack of motivation to sit in classes. You have challenges with student not making the milestones in school, especially the COVID era students. Now, these are the ones who are coming into the colleges right now, and at the universities, and they do have problems. And how much of support can we provide in a regular classroom? Let me be very clear. I've only talked about experiences which I have had in my classroom in Christian College Changanassery, and we found that actually, the time that you actually work with the students, that has to be increased. More than covering the syllabus, it's about how much of exercises we can get them to do in a classroom where we can, assist them with that. And that is where the tools become very useful for us. So, I think that the tools that we talked about, they could be quite handy, like the open read AI, for example. The open read AI actually was quite useful for the students, especially for the science, because for many of them, it was observed that in school many of the milestones could not be achieved because of COVID. So they have huge lacks, huge gaps, and they're unable to read effectively. And I believe that if these students are not helped at this point, what will happen is by the time they face the university exams, you will have situation where some of them would say, that they cannot comprehend the question that is written. Like they can respond to like, സാറേ ഈ ചോദ്യം എനിക്ക് മനസ്സിലാകുന്നില്ല, ഈ ചോദ്യം ഒന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിരാങ്കിൽ എനിക്ക് അതിനെ നന്നായിട്ട് എഴുതാൻ പറ്റുമായിരുന്നു. So this is where I think the role of AI could be utilized. Hi, Sam. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, with science fiction, you had the right from the almost the 70s, you had people talking about the how is that the AI the future could be, what are the kind of the uh, forms it would take, what are the responses you'd have. In fact, I believe there's a film by Spielberg on AI where it's about a child of almost 5 years old who actually attempts to love a human being. And the question that it was raising was that if you have a robot that loves you, would you love it back? So that was a question that it was trying to raise. So there have been questions being raised on the by science fiction all through, but what has been happening is that the majority of the platforms still are very, very technical. They are not moving into the areas where the gray areas where we are allowed to talk about ethics, the part about the way students would be interacting and whether it will be considerate enough to students and so on. So I believe there will be a lot of questions to be answered, and it is just the tip of the iceberg. And it's evolving faster. But the problem comes in the shift, like I mentioned, from the stages. For instance, how quickly AI will start moving across the stages. From stage one to stage two, how it has moved, and how it would move the next step. If we look into the from the progression from the artificial neural intelligence to the general intelligence to the artificial specific intelligence, the ASI, you will realize that it will start making decisions. That is where the problem comes in. By stage three, it will already have started making decisions, and that's a big question about when you hand over the authority to make decisions, what decisions it can do. For example, if for example it looks at a customer's name and something in the name is associated with a bias, then it may reject a customer, or if it's a customer care part, or it might deny a loan which is rightfully theirs. So these are the kind of challenges that can come in with machine consciousness. So we still haven't worked on those angles, but we will have to seriously look at that. So AI has always been talking about the science fiction has been talking about AI is kind of a loose cannon and the need to rein it in. But unfortunately, despite all that talk about that, currently the way AI is progressing is actually into that dangerous kind of a one. Hopefully, it is not the abyss that we can't extricate out of it, but it is going to be there. There are already instances of companies using that to push it into the level. Already in stage 2, they are giving it decision-making capacities, which is a kind of a alarming one. And I believe that the only way the academic fraternity needs to act is to get greatly involved. By staying away and saying that we will not participate in AI is actually you can't push the clock back. It is going to be here, and the role that we should, as critical humanities, take up is to get actively involved and start asking it to be regulated and start taking steps. See, there is no doubt that there is a fear and belief that it should be regulated, but we don't know how to regulate it yet. So that is where the language teachers have a major role to play, and I think that it should not be allowed to be in just strictly in the realm of the scientific or the technical realm to deal with that. But there must be major questions that I think the literature and as well as critical humanities should look into. So they are all, I believe there are many companies working on it. Even the I believe the ISC is also working on a similar platform where they're trying to develop an AI which can be a kind of a tutoring for learners. Because we need to take into account that the demand for learning English, especially, is going up exponentially. If, for example, when we and as a part of the program in the government of Kerala's ASAP Kerala, we were trying to have a model where we could actually have students logging into the knowledge Kerala Knowledge Economy Mission and getting a chance to learn language. We did try to bring in some tools of AI ML to some extent, but when we were even before we went into beta, there were huge requirements for that. So we will find more demand for AI coming in because learner autonomy is going to be sought after greatly, and whether it be the field of, let's say, tutoring or maybe in terms of online learning platforms, there's going to be huge demand for AI, and the sooner we are equipped with AI, it can change a lot of things. So I believe that the future is going to be for English teachers or teachers of English who are proficient in AI. That's the future that's going to be. Actually, I don't think English teachers would lose jobs, but they will be replaced by teachers who are adept at using AI. So that is where I see a lot of new jobs coming up, and also the possibility of actually developing new jobs. So prompt engineering, that's already there. There's also going to be a part about how is it that we are able to teach a machine. I mean, you not just within machine and human interface, but human to machine interfaces where you are able to tell the machine that this is how you need to learn. So these are the questions that would be coming up. So I believe that this is an area that has a lot of potential, and lots and lots of new jobs will be coming in this area. Yes, not immediately, but like I said, it's just a matter of time before it happens. Because the part about the imperative is that if it took 6 months to do that, after 6 months, it will just need 1 month to do it. And after that, you'll just need 1 week to do that. So it says qualitative assessments is just a matter of time. In fact, I think there are already a couple of tools which are there on that, and I think the board Kuchikaran, the board that is developed, you will see that there are errors, huge errors, but each time that you deal more with that, it comes up with greater responses. That's something you can see that because we've been running various tests and if you look at that, we've been running a series of things, and each time it is getting better. The students had a great fun with that, and I'll just quickly run through that. Uh, so you had students like logging in and saying hi machane, and it has coming responses, and slowly it started asking questions. When we asked it, give it response like, "Are you serious?" It did not figure out what you mean by serious. Are you serious? It did not figure out. But slowly, when we ran some more responses, somebody said that I am from this school in Tevikal, and somebody said that is Marine Drive a safe place, and so on. It suddenly started learning from the previous responses. We even there were some questions like, "Are you evil?" So suddenly it changes the tone. It says, "I apologize, and there's been some misunderstanding. I'm only recommending it. I don't have any ill intentions. I'm not evil," and so on. So it is learning every single response that you pay in. So we even brought in somebody from the commerce department, said, "Okay, we want to ask you a question like, do you have to pay GST in Kochi?" And it came up with responses. And someone said, "What about mixture? We all love mixture. So does it we have to pay it?" Yeah. Now here, what it did was it said GST mixture on mixtures and compounds can be tricky, and what main component is 25%, and so on. This response we actually checked with somebody from the GST department, and they said that if that is a very, very remarkable response, considering that much of this is still being debated in the open forum. So yeah, it learns. It learns, and we will still have to. It's getting better every time. So you can see that it got sometimes things wrong, but down the line it made the corrections. So yeah, we then asked it, "How do you learn things?" Interestingly, it did not refer to the AI ML neural network that is being created. It just said that I know about Kochi because I love about I grew up in that place, and I traveled all these things. So it's a vicarious way that it moves about. So it had this. So students had all sort of things like do you have a wife and other questions. So a lot of things about that. I think there are a couple of questions that I will take. So yes, questions. Yeah, Anil Surya. Yeah, okay. Chatbots, yeah, of course. Absolutely. See, Go is actually something that we have been trying out. So they came in responses like how to solve the traffic jam. So we were taking actually instances from the newspapers. So how is it that the National Highway Authority is trying to solve the traffic jam at Edapalli? So they came up with questions, and you can see that they had got a lot of ideas, and even local jokes. So I believe that yes, it's always possible for new developments to take up, and of course we will have to moderate it because there can be huge errors as well. So it's definitely worth looking into.
Yes, sir. My name is Nihal, and I have a question. Uh, Recently, I've been trying to write an article on Wakamalavi, and when I looked on ChatGPT and other AIs, his birthday was 1850s or 60s or something. But when I checked on some genuine sources, it says 1873. And when I checked about his birthplace, there was Wakam in Malappuram, but in reality it was in Thiruvananthapuram, I think. So my question is that how far we can trust AIs, or should we always cross-refer the results with some genuine sources?
Yeah, currently, when you are taking the responses from AI, you'll have to take it with a pinch of salt or a bucket of salt. It can get eaten, lose it by a huge mile. Sometimes, like I said, we were asking about MG Road in Cochin. It started responding to MG Road in Bangalore. So it can have huge errors, and you can't anyway take that as a absolute one. What you could do is like you could work with a series of cross listing. You could try with responses with similar AIs and then point it out to that. So it gives you a chance to actually, for a learner perspective, to actually learn how to fact check things. some time back, people believed anything that was on WhatsApp. Today, everybody checks for it. So, like I said, fact checking, that's another job that is really, really prominent. And I believe there's going to be a vacancy almost every single place, because, the amount of data that is coming out is just growing every day. And how do you measure the authenticity? The quality of every data depends actually on how effective it can be. So I think that you will have to be very careful about what you take from an AI, because it is infallible, unless of course it's some human moderation.
Okay, thank you, sir.
If there are no more questions, shall we conclude the session? Any more questions?
So
All right.
yeah, if anybody has any questions, you can give it now, or you can add my email. I'll share my email ID, so, and my number. So if there is any questions on that later, it can be sent. But it's an exciting area, and it's almost like getting a new tool to try out new things. In fact, when you talk about attention deficit, AI tools can really live in the classroom, and we had really trouble limiting the program. Instead of I think the best parameter was that we did not have anybody checking the time. So I think nobody was checking their watches, and they were all actively involved. So AI can be very handy, but of course, it's a great tool, but it can't be made a good master. It's a good servant. Treat it as that, and it should be fine.
So thank you, Dr. Anit Somraj, sir, for giving an insightful and informative session on different AI tools. And there were quite a number of questions that shows the interest that the participants had towards your session. So thank you very much, sir, for coming over and presenting your knowledge related to artificial intelligence. Participants, kindly note that we are going for a short break, or lunch break actually, and we'll resume by 2:30 p.m. To the paper presenters, kindly note that there are two groups, Group A and B, and separate Google Meet links have been provided in your WhatsApp group for each group of paper presenters. So kindly join in that respective group using the link provided. We'll resume by 2:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sam, and the organizers, and Ms. Sonia, for all the smooth conduct of the program. And I really appreciate your efforts to bring something at just the right time, because I believe that currently there's a lot of developments happening in the rest of the world, and we should not be away at this point. And the best part about AI is that even from the remote areas of India, there are people talking about it. Just last week, I was very surprised to actually be asked to talk to a group of doctors and teachers and others in Solan, a place in Himachal. Very interestingly, where they were actually talking about how it can be used for providing better inputs for farmers on the weather forecast and so on, and how is that AI could be used for that. So it's a great time to be, a very exciting time to be there. So thank you very much, and very excited, happy to be here, and I hope that there are greater discussions and learning happening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The participants may now leave and join back by 2:30 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.